Rivals define shonen just as much as the heroes do. These rivalries aren't just about fights, they're about philosophies, identities, and what it means to push yourself beyond your limits. Across 3 different generations of shonen, we've seen this archetype evolve, from Vegeta's pride to Sasuke's trauma to Bakugo's modern self-awareness. So today let's take a deep dive into these 3 characters, not just as individuals but as milestones in the evolution of rivals in shonen. Let's start with Vegeta. When Vegeta first appears in Dragon Ball Z, he's not framed as a rival in the traditional sense, he's just a villain. A Saiyan prince who arrives on Earth alongside Nappa. Vegeta's initial presence is pure destruction. He looks down on Earth, on humanity, and most of all, on Goku. His pride as royalty defines him, and right from the start, this sets the foundation of his rivalry. The first fight with Goku in the Saiyan saga is more than just a battle of strength, it's a clash of identities. Vegeta is the elite, raised with expectations of superiority, while Goku is the low-class Saiyan who grew up on Earth with none of that prestige. The fact that Goku can stand toe-to-toe with him and even surpass him with the Kaioken shatters Vegeta's worldview. And when Goku and his friends finally bring him down, Vegeta experiences humiliation to that level for the first time in his life. This humiliation becomes the fuel for his rivalry. From that moment on, Vegeta isn't just fighting enemies, he's also chasing Goku. Every arc of DBZ after that builds on this pursuit. On Namek, Vegeta's pride takes even more hits. We see him beaten down repeatedly by Zarbon, by Recoome, by Frieza. Each of these moments chips away at his arrogance, but instead of breaking him, it hardens his resolve. He keeps looking at Goku, the so-called low-class warrior, as the standard he needs to reach. And when Goku finally arrives on Namek and begins dismantling the Ginyu Force with ease, Vegeta is stunned. But in my opinion, Vegeta's true moment on Namek comes when he breaks down before Frieza. For the first time, his pride shatters completely. He drops the facade of the cold, ruthless prince and openly begs Goku to avenge their people. It's raw, desperate, and almost unthinkable for a man who had defined himself by his superiority and pride. But later, once everyone is transported back to Earth, Vegeta is visibly shaken and bitter, frustrated that Goku had reached the form he had chased for so long while he remained behind. This swing from vulnerability to anger captures the complexity of Vegeta's character and underscores just how layered his rivalry with Goku truly is. The Android and Cell sagas only deepen this theme. Vegeta finally achieves Super Saiyan, and in his own mind he's caught up with Goku at last. His pride resurfaces in full force, but it's still a hollow pride because almost immediately his arrogance becomes his downfall. He lets Cell absorb Android 18 because he wants to test himself against a stronger opponent, and that mistake nearly costs everyone their lives. What's interesting here is that Vegeta doesn't simply exist to be humbled. His flaws actively shape the plot. His pride isn't just a personality quirk, it's a driving force of the story itself. The Cell saga also gives us one of the most purest moments of his rivalry with Goku. When Goku sacrifices himself to stop Cell's self-destruction, Vegeta watches this unfold and is devastated. He realizes just how wide the gap still is. It's not so much about the power anymore. Goku embodies selflessness and heroism in a way Vegeta has never understood. And in that moment, Vegeta admits defeat, choosing to stop fighting altogether for a time. For someone like him, giving up is unthinkable, and yet his rivalry with Goku pushes him into that despair. But of course, the rivalry never truly ends. By the Buu saga, Vegeta has returned with a vengeance. His pride rears its head once more, leading to one of its most iconic moments, which is when he turned into Majin Vegeta. His deal with Babidi isn't just about gaining more power, it's about surrendering to his darker instincts, trying to reclaim the ruthless warrior he once was. And yet, even at his most prideful and destructive, there's complexity. His later sacrifice, where he blows himself up in an attempt to stop Buu, shows just how far he's come. For the first time, he acts not out of pride but out of love, for Bulma, for Trunks, and even for the Earth itself. That act of sacrifice cements his redemption. And by the end of DBZ, Vegeta isn't fully humble, he's still proud, still fiery, and still chasing Goku, but his rivalry has transformed. It's no longer fueled just by hatred, it's a rivalry rooted in respect. And we see this respect during the final moments in the battle with Kid Buu, when Vegeta acknowledges Goku as number one. For a character who once couldn't bear the idea of being surpassed, to openly admit Goku's superiority shows the complete arc of his pride and redemption. And overall, Vegeta's role as a rival changed the landscape of shonen storytelling. Before him, rivals were often just antagonists or short-term foils, but Vegeta proved that a rival could have just as much depth and longevity as the hero himself. His presence forced Goku to grow, but just as importantly, Goku's presence origins forced Vegeta to evolve, and his impact on the genre can't be overstated. So many rivals that came after him carry echoes of Vegeta's pride, his redemption, and his enduring complexity. And after Dragon Ball ended, another decade of shonen began, and it's in this decade we got the next evolution of the rival archetype in Sasuke Uchiha. From the very beginning of Naruto, Sasuke is framed as his rival, but the roots of that rivalry go far deeper than simple competition. He's a boy defined by loss, by betrayal, and by a single driving obsession, avenging the massacre of his clan. Where Naruto's loneliness makes him seek acknowledgement, Sasuke's trauma makes him seek power. Together, their parallel arcs create one of the most richest rivalries in shonen. So let's look at how this plays out in specific story moments. The first real showcase of Sasuke's role as a rival comes during the Chunin exams. Up until that point, we've seen glimpses of his skill and his cool demeanor, but the Chunin exams thrust him into the spotlight. His fight with Yoroi highlighted his analytical mind and combat prowess. But I would say the real turning point was his battle against Orochimaru in the Forest of Death. Orochimaru brands Sasuke with the cursed seal, triggering not just physical pain but also a symbolic corruption. It's as if his trauma has now been given a literal poisonous mark. This is where we begin to see the divergence between him and Naruto. Both are tainted by dark, uncontrollable powers, but their responses are different. Naruto resists his inner demon by clinging to bonds, while Sasuke embraces the cursed seal because it promises the strength he needs for revenge. The rooftop clash between the two before the time skip is also one of the most iconic scenes in the series. It's the first time we see how their rivalry threatens to tear them apart. Sasuke's jealousy of Naruto's rapid growth, fueled by his frustration at not being strong enough to kill Itachi, boils over into violence. And when Kakashi stops the fight and scolds them, it's clear this rivalry isn't just friendly sparring anymore. It's a broader conflict tied to emotions much darker than pride or competition. And then we arrive at the Valley of the End, the climax of part 1. This battle is the essence of their rivalry. Sasuke, driven by his need for power, chooses to abandon the village and his bonds, while Naruto, refusing to let his friends slip away, fights with everything he has to bring Sasuke back. The imagery here is deliberate. The statues of Hashirama and Madara loom over them, foreshadowing how their conflict is not just personal but also historical. They're reliving the cycle of shinobi conflict whether they want to or not. And when Sasuke ultimately spares Naruto's life, it reveals that even at his darkest, he can't sever that bond completely. But the fact that he leaves anyway shows just how far he's willing to go. Then in Shippuden, Sasuke's arc becomes even more complex. His battle with Itachi is one of the series' most important storylines. For years, his hatred of Itachi defines him. Every decision, every betrayal, and every ounce of pain is driven by the need to kill his brother. And when he finally does, when he finally achieves his lifelong goal, he discovers the truth. Itachi wasn't just a senseless murderer. He was a tragic figure who sacrificed everything for the village, and for Sasuke's survival. This revelation shatters Sasuke. His entire identity has been built on revenge, and now that foundation collapses. Instead of finding peace, he redirects his hatred towards Konoha itself. This is where Sasuke diverges most sharply from Vegeta as a rival. Vegeta's pride is a personal flaw, one he eventually tempers, while Sasuke's trauma is more systemic. It ties into the very corruption of the shinobi world itself. His rivalry with Naruto is no longer just about their personal bond, but about their visions of the future. Their second major fight at the Valley of the End, in the climax of Shippuden, is the culmination of everything. Sasuke believes the cycle of hatred can only be broken if he becomes the sole ruler, carrying the burden of the world's sins, while Naruto still believes in shared bonds, in connection, in finding peace through community. And by the end of their battle, both are broken, lying side by side, missing an arm each. The symbolism couldn't be clearer. Neither wins outright, neither can fully destroy the other. And when Sasuke finally admits defeat, it's not because Naruto beat him physically, but because Naruto's worldview reached him emotionally. He acknowledges that Naruto's refusal to give up, his insistence on bonds, has changed him. This redemption doesn't erase Sasuke's sins though. He still bears the guilt of his choices, but it reframes his rivalry with Naruto. From the start, their bond was always about more than just competition. It was about identity, ideology, and the possibility of breaking free from cycles of pain that defined their world. Sasuke represents a darker, more mature evolution of the rival archetype. Where Vegeta was about pride and redemption, Sasuke is more about trauma, destiny, and ideology. He's more of an equal to Naruto, his mirror, and in many ways the true co-protagonist of the series. And in terms of cultural impact, Sasuke reflects the shift in shonen during the 2000s. This was a time where stories grew more complex, darker, and more emotionally charged. Rivals weren't just foils anymore, they were narrative engines, carrying entire plotlines on their shoulders. Sasuke is a perfect example of this. His choices drive the story just as much as Naruto's do, and their rivalry becomes the emotional core of the series. And finally, we have Bakugo, who represents the evolution of the rival archetype in the 2010s. He represents the modern rival, brash, loud, still overflowing with pride, but layered with vulnerability, guilt, and a capacity for self-reflection that we saw in the previous generation with Sasuke, but done much earlier in the story this time. From the very beginning, Bakugo is set up as Deku's foil. In the first episode, we see him as the star of the school, the boy with the flashiest quirk, destined for greatness. And right next to him is Deku, quirkless, timid, and constantly bullied by Bakugo. Their relationship begins in a very toxic space, and unlike Vegeta, Bakugo starts as an enemy not on the battlefield but as an antagonist in Deku's everyday life. The early dynamic between them is important. Bakugo looks at Deku not with respect but with contempt. To him, he's weak, and weakness is unforgivable. When All Might passes one for all to Deku, it flips their world upside down. Suddenly, the boy Bakugo mocked is rising in the same arena as him, gaining fast ground, and Bakugo can't process it. His superiority complex begins to crack. But the rivalry really deepens during the League of Villains kidnapping arc. When Bakugo is captured, it could have been the cliche rival joining the villain storyline that we've seen in older series. Instead, Horikoshi subverts that trope. Bakugo refuses their offer. He doesn't want destruction for its own sake. He wants to be the #1 hero, and while his pride blinds him in many ways, his core values remain intact. Unlike Vegeta or Sasuke, who once sided with evil, Bakugo stands firm. This moment redefines him not as an antagonist, but as someone whose rivalry with Deku is built on different visions of heroism, not opposing morality. The emotional peak of this rivalry, though, comes later, around Season 3 with their private fight after All Might's retirement. This is where Bakugo's walls begin to crack. He admits in his own raw way the guilt he feels over All Might's decline. He blamed himself for being captured, for forcing All Might into a corner where he had to use the last of his strength. And in that guilt, he sees Deku not as a weakling anymore, but as someone who has inherited the torch he believes he caused to fall. This fight is remarkable. Bakugo finally voices the insecurities he's been carrying. For a character who spent the first half of the series screaming about superiority, admitting weakness is monumental. And when Deku responds not with anger but with understanding, their rivalry begins to shift into something healthier. They're no longer just trying to outdo one another. They're beginning to push each other forward. Then in the Paranormal Liberation War arc, he goes as far as throwing himself in harm's way to save Deku, a complete reversal from the boy who once mocked him for being weak. And in Season 6, his apology to Deku is one of the most emotional beats in the entire series. The boy who once made fun of Deku for being powerless now admits that he was in the wrong, that his cruelty came from insecurity, and that now he sees Deku as someone worth chasing. This evolution is critical. Bakugo's rivalry isn't static. It changes in real time alongside the story, reflecting not just its growth but the way modern shonen storytelling approaches rivals, where Vegeta's redemption took hundreds of episodes, and Sasuke's ideological battle stretched across years. Bakugo's development is more immediate, more intimate. He grows up together with Deku in the same space. Thematically, Bakugo represents the rival as emotional growth. He embodies the 2010s shift in shonen towards vulnerability, mental health, and the acknowledgement of flaws. His explosive personality hides insecurity, and the series doesn't shy away from showing that. In fact, that vulnerability becomes his strength. He doesn't abandon his pride, but he learns to reshape it, to turn arrogance into determination, and so rivalry into respect. In the end, Bakugo's story isn't just about redemption through pride like Vegeta's, or liberation from trauma like Sasuke's. It's about self-awareness. It's about realizing that rivalry doesn't have to be rooted in hatred. It can also be rooted in respect. He starts as the bully, the loudmouth, the seemingly one-note antagonist, and he grows into one of the most emotional aspects of the MHA story. Together, these three characters represent the evolution of shonen itself, from the classic battle-focused stories of the past, to the darker, more emotionally complex narratives of the 2000s, then to the modern focus on vulnerability and growth. The rival archetype has grown with the audience, and that's what makes rivals so special. They're not just obstacles for the protagonist to overcome, they're mirrors, foils, and sometimes even the heart of the story itself. Shonen rivals have always pushed the genre forward, and in that process they've become some of the most beloved characters in anime history.